they have these huge, well, the real word is tangi, but it's like a giant funeral. But for the gangs, they will have like cavalcades of, I don't know, like 200, 300 bikes and cars. They'll take over towns. They'll get into fights. They'll shoot some guns sometimes. So like their public image is, F you guys, we're not a part of your society. And people don't like them for that. I get it, but they're not the big culprits now. They're sometimes being used as distribution points because they know the communities and they're embedded in them. But the bigger gangs are now becoming sort of all powerful. And also, I mean, another story behind this and something that I think you've touched on in a few previous shows is that a lot of the money's being washed by Chinese gangsters, right? So the Triad groups are very prevalent here. There's a big dodgy casino in the middle of Auckland by the big tower, looks like that Seattle Tower. And these guys just rock up there and they're laundering billions of dollars of cash, through various means to do with Chinese transnational crime. So the stuff that you would be speaking about in California, for example, like that's here. And people don't get it. They're like, "Oh, we watched Sicario. It's something else. This is not us." It's like, guys, this is happening.
That still happens in America. There's a lot of people that don't believe that's you know what I mean. So it's going to take a long time for anyone to start believing that. What I find interesting, I know we have triads in America as well, but per capita, it sounds like just a small amount of triads is a big deal, in New Zealand. So you would think that would kind of raise a little bit of question. But, the other question I have is the alliance you have with cartel and triads in that little area. It almost feels like you'd have to have a different approach than what we do, right? It's almost a whole different organization than it is what we deal with here. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I did another story about Chinese money laundering at the end of last year, and something that I didn't expect to find out was I spoke to a bunch of guys in the DEA and other groups, and they said, we just don't have guys who speak Mandarin. Like we can't get into these groups because we do not have the amount of agents that speak Mandarin. We had tons of guys speaking Italian back in the day when the mafia were big. We have tons of Spanish-speaking Americans that can get into the cartels, but we have no one who is in those Chinese communities. It's funny how you have these gigantic bureaucracies and it can come down to something as simple as we cannot speak Chinese. Like it kind of blows my mind.
I never thought that.
Yeah.
No, it's great. That's just, I just can't even imagine how this is the first time we're hearing this. And is the longer it goes unnoticed, if you will, by the public, by law enforcement in a big scale, I mean, it's just going to be a massive takeover, right? It becomes where they start taking way more control.
Yeah, I mean, the nexus between the Sinaloas especially and Chinese money launderers is like now the way that money goes dark in the underworld worldwide. Like, I think someone quoted it to me, it's around $2 trillion. I don't know. You can take a lot of these numbers with a pinch of salt. It's a lot of money that the Chinese are now money laundering, and it goes through a system called flying money, similar to Hawala in the Arab world, mirror transactions, stuff that the feds find it really difficult to track. Back in the 90s when, I don't know, Escobar was rampaging across Colombia, they would be laundering their money through local guys, maybe Americans who would be sticking it in Panamanian bank accounts and whatnot. But they would charge 15 to 20% off the top to do that. The Chinese come in, they're like, hey guys, I'll do it. And you only have to give me like, $100,000 a pop. And now, you get entire cities like, Sydney, Australia, Vancouver is huge for this, Toronto. You see that huge tower in LA that's covered in graffiti. This is dark Chinese money. And you can see it in major cities now. So big has this connection become between the Chinese and Latin American cartels. And it's just, out here, we're late to the game. We tend to be, but it's no different. And unless like authorities make a sort of decisive action to try and intercept some of this stuff. something that we haven't even spoken about yet is how these are affecting the Pacific Island nations, because these are guys whose entire drug world up until like 15, 20 years ago was the odd, joint. And now they have huge meth addiction problems out of nowhere, and they have no harm reduction. They have no government policies for drug addiction. And they're just being swamped like by drugs overnight, and they've got no means of combating it. So Fiji, people might know it from Fiji water or going on holiday there. A beautiful country, about 1 million people, 300 islands, but they have in the last 3 or 4 years developed a huge drug addiction problem because so many people are involved in ripping these drugs on and off and then sending them on their merry way, that they're taking a bit for themselves, and now domestic consumption is its own market. And so authorities don't know how to deal with this. And the problem with Fiji in particular, they had a huge, massive meth bust. I think Jan 2023, like 5 or 6 tons of meth washed up on the shores in Nandi, which is the second largest city where most people go on vacation. Immediately, overnight, half of it went missing from police custody. So they now only have like 2.5 tons, right? Whoopsie. And they've arrested some low-level guys, but everyone's saying this is being done with the involvement of the government. You cannot get 5 or 6 tons of drugs into a country that size without someone at the top saying, yeah, sure, do it. It's nuts. It's really, we're at the kind of like tip of the spear, really, when it comes to sort of how these drugs are really affecting the islands that it's going through. But again, like, I think it will become a bigger news story as you see some real sort of political fallout from it, which is going to come.
Have you, because you're reporting on this, right, and you're writing these articles, are you catching any heat from anyone right now?
No, I mean, you get the odd crappy message, but no, nothing that I'm too worried about. I think going after a journalist would be heat that they don't need. I say that like touching wood under the table, but yeah, I don't think. I mean, it's the same when you go to Mexico. It's the local reporters who are going to cop the most heat and be in real, danger